Welcome back to the workshop. Episode 2 of the Porsche, taking a Porsche on a track day series. This is a 3-part series. This is number 2. I'll put number 1 in the description below. So yeah, follow us and we're going to do a bit of mechanical maintenance on our Porsche. Always a bit rattly on start up, these Porsches, aren't they? And we come onto the ramp. Be careful not to damage anything. Hello. Right, first thing we need to do is get the car on the ramp. So the order we're going to do this in is we're going to get the car on the ramp. We need to change the oil on it because it's always good to change the oil on your car, especially before and after any hard driving. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. So yeah, we'll get it up on the ramp, we'll change the oil and we'll have a good look over the car and check for anything loose, anything hanging off, anything that may cause a problem on the track. So let's get it on and get to work. This is the bit where I need to jack it up a little bit. Porsches are quite low. Skip to some music. Going up. Right, car's up. Now, the important thing is, let's have a cup of tea. And while we're over here, having a cup of tea, I'm going to introduce our partners for this episode. Someone that I work with closely anyway, being as we have a garage, we are a partner of Castrol and the race group. So we're going to use some of their products while we maintain our Porsche today. One of them being their mug full of tea. The second thing we're going to use oil. But we're not going to use the classic oil in that can. We've got some oil over there which we're going to use, which is the correct oil for our Porsche. We're also going to use some of this. I don't know if anyone's used any of this. This is engine shampoo. Not to be mixed up with normal shampoo because the bottle does look quite shampooey. I could easily find that in my bathroom. But don't, because it will not clean your hair. So this is engine shampoo. This goes in the engine pre-oil change, and what it'll do is it'll circulate the system, it'll clean all the sensors, get rid of any gunk, get rid of any carbon deposits. So yeah, cleaning the sensors, cleaning all the oil ways, it kind of flushes the system out. So then you leave it running for a bit with this in, then we'll drain the oil and it'll just come out, it'll come out different, it'll come out a bit watery because it's all flushing all the system out. And then after that, we fill it up with fresh oil and away to go. So yeah, we'll give that a go, see how we get on with that. Right, while we got it up, let's just have a quick look around. So, going back to track days, we're not just maintaining this Porsche. It's not just an episode of maintaining this Porsche and showing you how to do that. It's also the track day series. So, yeah, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look under the car and just check for anything loose, anything hanging off, any bits of plastic and things that shouldn't be where they are, because when you're on the track you do not want things coming off your car and spreading all over the track. Just little things like bits of plastic, bits of under tray, you don't want any of that. So just make sure that your car is intact before you go to a track day. Things like tyres, we'll get onto that in a minute, we need to check all those. Now the thing about a Porsche is it's basically got a flat floor on it. I mean, it's not a flat floor, but it's got plastic guards all underneath, so you can't really see anything. Which isn't a bad thing, but also that can hide stuff. So ideally, when you're doing a full service on one of these, you would need to pull all these under trays off and check all your brake lines and check for any corrosion or any damage underneath these. We're not going to do that today, but if we were doing an episode of fully servicing the Porsche, then that's what we'd do. But as a track day preparation, just before we go out, I know this car's all right. So what I'm going to do is just give it a check over and make sure there's nothing hanging off, nothing loose. Track rod ends are all intact. Brakes, they're all good. So yeah, just a quick visual check there, which I know it's all right, to be honest, but you always got to check, because I do use this pretty much, you know, every other day. It goes out quite often, even this time of year in the winter, so worth just checking. It's had a full set of 6 coil packs and plugs recently. They're not a bad job to do, they're just up there. It's a bit fiddly because you've got to get in around the exhaust, but they're just up there. I'll get a torch for you to see in a minute. So if you look up there, there's the nice new coil packs. Not a bad job at all to do. So there's 3 on that side, and then there's 3 on this side, held in with a Torx bit. Sometimes they can round off, so just make sure your Torx bit is in all the way. Don't have it halfway in, because they're quite easy to strip the head on them. But yeah, so that was done a few weeks ago, so we know that's all good. Well, let's get to work anyway, because we're going to have these wheels off and we're going to change the oil. Now I'll show you how easy it is to change an oil on a Cayman. Basically, you drain that plug there, comes out, drains the oil out, and then there is the filter. So you just undo that, replace the paper element and screw it back in. Then you fill it from the top. How simple is that? Don't really need to pay Porsche bills for that. You can do that yourself if you've got a jack and some stands. Don't know how well that'll go down with Porsche. Let's pop the bonnet. Right, in here, in this little flap, is where our oil goes. So what we're going to do now is, we're going to undo that, and we're going to stick our engine shampoo in there. Right, so we're going to stick this back together now, put the oil cap back on. We're going to run it now for about 5-10 minutes, just so it gets all around the system and it's nice and warm. The car is quite warm, the oilways are warm because I've driven it down here, but we need to let it run so we can get the Castrol shampoo to go all around the system. While we're doing that and letting it run, I'll show you how to get into the engine bay of the Porsche, because looking at that there, you'd think, where is the engine? But I'll show you how to get to that. It's a special tool that I've made for doing it. Well, maybe I haven't made it, but it's a special tool that I've got to get in there, and I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to show you how to get into the engine bay. So, first, you remove this little net here. It's only held on with a hook. So put your net there. You need to use this. This is a special tool, Porsche engine cover. What it really is a trim removal tool, which is really good for this job. So then you get this into the corners there, and you pop it up like that and go around. One there that's a bit tricky. There we go. And then you pull that off and you put that somewhere safe, maybe next to this 928 here. 968, sorry, that is a 968, not 928. If you want to see an episode on the 968, you just let me know in the comments. So then you get your Torx. And there is 5, I think, bolts on this engine cover, which you undo. Got one there. Now I'm just doing this to show you while we're letting the engine shampoo go around the system. But it's quite handy to know, because for me, if I had this car and I knew that the engine was hidden away under here, I'd kind of really want to look in there just to make sure there's nothing like a cat or something got in there, or I don't know. Just for my own peace of mind, really, just so I can keep a check of it. And this is part of our maintenance in this episode. Even if we don't do much under here now, it's good to have a look, isn't it? I use this wing protector because the rear wings on a Porsche are so big, and you got your zip and things on there. You don't want to scratch it, do you? Right, it's the last one. So this is like without this on, it's quite loud in the car. This acts like a sound deadening thing. This and the cover. So you notice the noise changes once you lift that off. So there she is. That's the top of the flat 6. Now in here, I might show you that actually because it's worth checking. That's the air filter. On the S, I think the S and the one above, so the 3.4 litre one, they will have 2 air filters, one on each side, but this only has 1. So I'll show you that in a minute. There's a little hatch here that we can get into. We'll just check the condition of it. Everything else is all right though. It's a little bit dusty in here, but that's to be expected. There's another water tank there, so when you're bleeding the system, if you ever have to drain it for any reason, you top it up here, but you bleed the system from there. That's the actual header tank. Just be careful when you're doing this job not to lose any of your screws into the engine, because you might never see them again. Most engine bays will just drop onto the floor, but this won't. So in there is our air filter element. It's a bit tricky to get that out. You have to push it one way and pull it out. But this isn't old, so we're not going to change that now because I know that it's not long been done. But I wanted to check that there was no leaves or if it was sooted up and black, I would have changed it, but it's still quite fresh. So we'll leave that as it is. Might even be worth putting a performance one in at some point. At the moment it's just a standard one, but I wouldn't say no to a upgraded one. Maybe my friend Rich at ITG, he send me one over. We need to make sure the car's breathing correctly on a track day, because it's another thing that it's going to be doing is heavily breathing, because that is the idea. You're going to be putting your foot down. So that needs to be all good. So we'll finish our cup of tea while this is running oil shampoo through the system, the cleaning stuff, and then we'll come back to it in a minute. I'm going to put this back together now. I just want to get one thing clear. This is not a paid partnership. I use this stuff anyway, and I rate it, so that's why I'm kind of talking about it. We don't get paid for anything we do on our channel. It's just, if we think it's good, we'll talk about it. If we think it's not very good, we'll maybe tell you about that as well. Now, we've had it running there for about 10 minutes all in all. So we're going to get it back up now. We're going to drain the old fluid out, change the filter, and then put the new fresh nectar into its mouth. Let's get our oil drain. Now there's an Allen key head in the sump plug. So another thing, you've got to be careful not to round, because this is all alley casing, so got to be careful not to round it. It should, you know, I've changed the oil quite regularly on this car, so it should come up with not too much stress, but you never know. Because it's exposed to everything, it can get a little bit corroded. That, first time. Tell I've done this before, can't you? There we go. It was a bit tight, but it's all right. I put some gloves on. The noise of gloves going on. Whee! Now, the reason why that's come out so fast and so watery like that is because it's got the engine shampoo in it. So you can see it's like, well, it's flushing it all out basically, all over the place, all over me and the floor. I didn't expect that much pressure from it, to be honest. It's quite hot as well, but that's expected. So while you're looking at that, I'm going to clean myself up. And to be honest, the oil in this was reasonably clean because I do change it quite regularly. But there's no harm at all in doing that. And there's definitely no harm in flushing the system out, because we're going to put some fresh stuff in now, because on a track day it will get a little bit of abuse. So we'll let that drain off the last few bits. I'm going to see if I've got the right copper washer for my sump plug. I'm going to put that back in. Then I'm going to pull the filter housing off, and I'm going to replace the filter and the little rubber seal, put it back together, drop it down, put some oil in it. So I'm going to get rid of my old copper washer, and I'm going to put my fresh one on there. We're nearly finished draining now. Give it a couple of minutes, and then we'll replace sump plug and copper washer. Don't want to do that too tight. Le filter. This is pretty full, this. There's like 7 litres, just over 7 litres in the Porsche. So, yeah. See how much comes out of this. I'm going to get a kit out now, so we can use this multi-sided thing. Now, I will admit here now, I wouldn't always use this type of filter remover on a plastic housing, because it can crack. But I know for a fact that this hasn't been off that long ago, so I'm going to use this because I know it won't be extremely tight. But what you should use is the correct version of one of these. Now, we have got one somewhere, but it seems to be missing and I can't have it to hand right now. So that's the only reason I'm using this. So I'm just covering myself there for anyone watching. But I know, there we go. Yeah, it was a little tight, but it's not damaging the casing at all. Just means I'm going to have to go on the hunt for the correct one, because it is here somewhere. But we do a lot of oil changes on these, so it won't be far. So I'm going to let that drip dry for a minute. Let me just remove the old filter. There we go. You know what? It smells as well. It smells different. I've got a problem with smelling bits of car, haven't I? But look, you can see that oil filter, you know, that was ready to change. You can see it's slightly starting to distort where it's sucking itself in a little bit. So I mean, that isn't that old, to be honest, and it's a decent one. You know, it's a Marl one. Nice new filter. And then we need to change the rubber ring on the filter housing, the little gasket. So I will need, this is always quite fiddly. So we use one of these little picks just to pick it off. Hey! Flick it at your cameraman and cover him in oil. Now, like most of you know, you need to sit this in its groove, which in this case is the bottom one. But then you also need to make sure that it's well lubricated when it goes back on, lubricated with oil. Because what will happen is if it's not and it goes in dry, it will potentially pick up on the seal and it'll leak. We've had that before, even with a well lubricated one, it can still pick up sometimes, especially if there's a little nick in it. Screw it back on. Now I'll nip it up with that tool, and once I find my correct tool, I'll tighten it properly. But I'll go all the way as far as I can by hand first, because that's almost enough. There will be a torque setting probably on the case. I'm not going to go any further with that. I'll go the rest of the way when I find my tool. so I might have to cut for a cup of tea while I find my tool. But yeah, that is pretty much it. Drain, filter, and then fill from the top with some nice fresh Castrol oil. Now, to find out which oil I need in this car, because we're not just changing oil today, we're going to change oil, brake fluid, because I want to put a high performance brake fluid in, Castrol SRF. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there is a Castrol system that you can go onto online, and it will tell you exactly what you need for your vehicle. So you type the registration in, and it comes up with all the literage and what grades and all that. So I'm going to show you that now. Tea's cold. Tea's gone cold, I'm wondering why. I've been changing the oil in my Porsche. So before we fill it up with oil, you need to know what oil goes in it. Now I know what oil goes in it, but this is how you do it. I'll show you on the system. MX-07, Mike Uniform Papa, Porsche Cayman, click on that. Right, here it tells you everything. It tells you the layout, how many cylinders, how many valves per cylinder, displacement, power rating even. Then the important bit is capacities and the changes, the interval changes, and then also the grades of oil that you need to use. So we can use 040, we can use 540, and we can use 540 edge. Yeah, so A3 and B4 or 540 edge. Now, we're going to use ours in normal conditions, so we're going to put 540 A3 B4 in our car today. And how much literage do we need? We need 7.75 litres, and the filter capacity is 0.25 of a litre. Recommend 30,000 kilometres or roughly 24 months. Now I usually do most of my cars 12,000 miles or 12 months, or I do it more depending on how much I use them. With cars like this, which I like to drive quite hard, I'll probably change it more often. But that is totally up to you. But seeing as we're doing a track day, I'd like to go with fresh oil in my car. It also tells you brake fluid, cooling system, transaxle oil. It tells you everything here, differential oil. So it tells you every version of oil you need in this car and what the capacities are. So it's really, really handy. That is the Castrol lubricants. Then you can go to new search, you can put any car in, it'll bring up most vehicles. If you can't find it on there, then give them a ring and they will probably tell you. That is the Castrol Ambassador Lubricants Advisor. So, we know what we need to do now, we just need to do it. You know one annoying thing about the Porsches, or this Porsche, there's no dipstick. So once I'm going to fill it in stages. I'm going to put 5 litres in first, then I might put another 6 litres, 6.5. Then I'm going to check the dashboard because it's digital. The dipstick on this, it comes up on the dashboard. So I'll wait until I've got about 6, because there is some. You'll never get all the oil out of the system, so there will be some in there. So if I put 6.5, check the system then on the dashboard, see where it's at, and then I can top it up a little bit from there. But yeah, that's an annoying thing. I like a good old dipstick. You know where you stand with one of them, don't you? Bring back the dipstick. That could be a new catchphrase, couldn't it? Bring back the dipstick. Right, I'm going to put this oil into there, into my Castrol jug. Castrol jug. I haven't just stuck that on, it was actually supplied by Castrol. I'm going to put it up to there, 5 litres. So I'm going to put 5 litres in, chuck that in the car, and then, like I said, do a bit at a time. A little bit at a time. This is where it goes horribly wrong and all over the floor. Steady as she goes. Pour it straight in. Just take a bit of time, you don't want to rush this bit just in case it backs up and fills your boot full of oil. What I do is you go on your little stalk, you go to oil, click on that, then you've got to wait then, so engine off, on a flat surface, then you've got to wait about 30 minutes, which is really annoying, but it will measure it says there's a little countdown clock there, as you can see. So yeah, we'll grab a cup of tea and we'll see you in a minute. Right, what we're going to do now is I'm going to pull the wheels off, I'm going to inspect the tyres, I'm going to inspect the brakes, I'm going to inspect all the suspension components with the wheel off. So braking is really important on a track day. You need to make sure your car is braking correctly and also cornering correctly and gripping correctly. So that's tyres and brakes. So that's what we're going to go on to next. Now we will be using some Castrol fluid in our brakes, which is Castrol SRF. I'll show you that in a minute. Castrol, if you're going to use Castrol SRF, you can only use Castrol SRF in your system. So what we're going to have to do, because we're unsure of what grade of brake fluid is in this car at the moment, because I've bled it, but I've never actually changed it completely. So it's always had just normal .4. And the last time I did a track day, the brake pedal went a bit long, so it basically cooked the brake fluid. So this performance brake fluid, Castrol SRF, has a higher boiling point, so it means that the harder you drive it, you shouldn't cook the brakes. So you should have brakes all the time, even when the car is roasting hot. I'm going to whip these off, I'm going to check that, and then we're going to bleed the system, and we're going to flush it through with some nice fresh Castrol SRF. And it's good to note, maybe put it in your service history or something, that the car that you are using has Castrol SRF to avoid anyone mixing it with anything wrong if you ever sell the car, or if you forget that you've put it in. So that's just a little tip. Don't have to do that, but that is just a little tip. So that's what we're going to do next. So let's get these wheels off and have a look what we got under there. There we go. We'll have a look at that tyre in a minute. It is a Pilot Sport Michelin, that. So brake pads and discs on the rear. Check any of your coil springs as well. You want to make sure that none of them are broken, because you can't go and do a track day with a broken spring. Check your brake lines, that there's no corrosion, because the last thing you want is heavy braking, loads of pressure, and your brake line bursting. Now that goes back to when I said about the underfloor protection. That's covering all the brake lines. So ideally, if you don't know, then you should pull those off and inspect your brake lines before doing a track day, because coming to the first corner, hard on the brakes, because you remember you're braking a lot harder on the racetrack than you would be on the main road. So you don't want to come into the first corner, whack the brakes on and blow a brake pipe, because that is your day over with, then it's just a waste of money. Also, it's hassle as well. So inspect your brake pads. Now we got quite low brake pads, but they're not on 0, so there's plenty on them for another track day. Discs, inspect your discs. Now Porsche discs and brakes are quite expensive, so but they're designed for quite high performance, so they're going to be good. There's a tiny little lip forming on these, but nothing bad enough to change. Now the little surface rust on there, you can see it's just because it's been stood for a couple of days, and I've only driven it down from the house, so that'll clear up no problem. So I'm pretty happy with the back ones. We'll pull these off in a minute. These are the little bleed nipples. We need to make sure that they're all free and clear. There's one on each side on these. Most calipers only have one. Porsche calipers have 2, one on each side. That's because there's more than one piston in there. So we'll bleed the brakes through there. We're going to start on this corner, then we'll go to that corner. So we'll start left, we're furthest away from the master cylinder basically. So the master cylinder is on the front off side, so the driver's side front. So we're going to do the one that's furthest away first. So we'll do this one, then we'll go to the rear one on the other side, then we'll go to the front one on this side, and then we'll go back to the closest one, which is the driver's front. So start off passenger rear, driver's rear, passenger front, driver's front, in that order. Right, I think it's time to pull the front wheel off and have another cup of tea. I know not everybody has facilities of a ramp at home, but you don't even need a ramp. If you've got some car jacks and some stands, you can do most of this yourself. Some of the basic stuff. If you haven't, then you might have to pay someone to do it. But everything I talk about is definitely worth doing, especially if you're going to drive the car hard or do a track day. So let's have a look at the front brakes. Now the front brakes are in pretty much the same condition as the rear. There's a slight tiny lip on the front disc, and the pad's a little bit low, but they're not on 0. There's plenty on them, plenty enough to do another track day. Now the last time I went on a track day, I don't know if anyone's come across this before. This here, that's cable tied here, is your pad wear indicator. Now the last track day I went on with this, it melted the brake wear indicator. The plastic of it melted, and then the brake light came on. The brake pad low warning light came on. Now I knew I didn't have no brake pads, but obviously it was something that I was thinking, oh, what's happened? I'm going to have to pull over and inspect this. So I looked around, and all I could see was the little brake wear indicator, which goes into the brake caliper, had actually melted because it got so hot. So That's another thing to think about. If you have got those little devices, what I've done here is just blanked it off. I haven't damaged it so it's never usable again. I've just blanked it off. So if you get a new set of brake pads, you usually get a wear indicator with them, so you can just replace it and put it back to standard. So I haven't damaged the system, but I have blanked them off so that that doesn't happen again. But I can return it to normal. It's not damaged the car at all. I mean, not all cars have wear indicators. It's just for lazy people, really, that don't know how to check their brakes. So yeah, again, we'll check the springs on the front, check all the track rod ends, anti-roll bar links for any play, brake pipes. Tiny bit of corrosion on that, but like it's minimal, it's tiny, it's just a little bit. Right, so first, what I'm going to do is just check that all these nipples come undone, because these are really delicate parts that can easily stripped or snapped. I always worry when I'm doing this because it's flipping, it could write the caliper off if they don't come undone. So just work it backwards and forwards a little bit, just to make sure that it's all smooth. And then we can get our glorious assistant in the car to operate the pedal. And I will work down here with the bleed bottle and the ratchet. And we will bleed the system through with some fresh SRF, which is like Castrol's high performance brake fluid. So we're starting off in this corner. We've got someone in the car pumping the pedal. So open the nipple, pedal up, down, up, down. Right, so we've been around the car a couple of times now. About to empty this a couple of times as well, because I think we're through now. The SRF is fully through the system. I've just got to go and do that one last on the driver's side. Make sure that the reservoir's topped up, which I'll show you how to do in a minute. And then I think we're fully bled with Castrol SRF, which is just what we wanted. So in this little compartment here, whoops, is your brake reservoir. So we'll open that and we'll tip some of our fresh SRF into there. Fill the SRF into there, pump it through the system, cap back on. Let's go racing. Next thing to inspect is tyres, wheels and tyres. Now these tyres are coming up to their wear limits, still plenty on them. But we're using a Michelin Pilot Sport, quite a good tyre. Now on Porsches they have to be N rated, so there'll be a little N logo on the tyre somewhere. There we go, N4. Most Porsche tyres should have them. But if not, just get a decent quality road tyre. If you don't want to go all out and spend money on a Track-day specific tyre, just get a really good quality road tyre like a Michelin Pilot Sport or a Bridgestone or similar. Check your tyres then for any, well, check it for grip firstly. You want as much grip as possible, just in case it's a wet track day. Also, it's worth getting these balanced maybe. So get the front and rear tyres balanced. Front is more important, you'll feel it more through the front wheels because you feel it through the steering wheel. But yeah, check the condition of the tyres, that there's no cuts in them, that you've got tread, front and rear. And then if you find that your front tyres are wearing slightly, then maybe get the car tracked. It's always worth getting the four-wheel alignment done before you go and do a track day, because you want to know that your car, one, that there's no joints out of place, and two, that it's steering in the right direction. So you want it dead on straight, so that you can, well, it's one less thing to worry about. That you don't want to go around the track day with your steering out of line. You need it right. So yeah, tyres, tracking. If you've got a system like we have, then you can track it yourself. But if not, get it booked into your local tracking place. Get the four-wheel alignment done. There's adjustment on the back of a Porsche. Some cars it's just the front, but obviously on this it's four-wheel alignment. On some front-wheel drive cars it would just be front-wheel alignment. So yeah, very important, because tyres are the one thing that's sticking you to the road. So you need a good set of tyres. Like I said, it doesn't have to be high quality race tyres, but I would say a premium road tyre would be suffice. So let's just check this again. Go onto here, go onto oil. This time it only takes 6 seconds because it's already done its thing. And there we go. It does show slight notch off top, but that has oil in it now. So I'll top up a tiny bit and I'll let it run and then I'll check it again. But that is how you check it. So that stalk on there and on there. Very annoying. Bring back the dipstick. So I hope you enjoyed that little episode of track day and general maintenance on a Porsche Cayman. We've introduced you to the car in a previous episode. We talked about the kit and what you need for a track day. Today we've talked about maintenance and what you need to check for before doing a track day. So that leaves the next episode to be a track day. So let's go to a track day. We'll show you how to sign on and how to go about just doing a track day really. So get yourself some engine shampoo to chuck in your car to make sure it's nice and fresh. And also like, subscribe, and please come back and comment as well. We like some comments. See you on the next one. Bye bye now.